for a press conference here. I've been sitting back while I've been sitting. I've been reading this indictment. I got a bail application indictment that went down just a little bit ago. Rex A. Heuermann, middle initial Rex A. Heuermann. Who is Rex A. Heuermann? Who is this guy? Right? Press conference is coming. So it looks like at this time, according to the charging documents, that he's only been charged with three victims so far. Only three. He has 6 total charges. The victims is Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. So 3. Melissa Bartholomew. Each one is first-degree murder. M-U-R-D-E-R on each. Each one got first degree, and then each one got second degree. So I guess they charge them with both second and first degree. I don't know how that works and the reasoning behind that. But there was some interesting stuff. One, I heard DNA did nail him. Some DNA they were able to obtain. Says a cooler was removed from his home, which is like very close to Gilgo Beach, where this tragedy occurred back in 2010. Waiting for the press conference to come up here, but this is just a wild situation. Some guy that I don't know if he was under their radar, or I don't know when he got under their radar. I played on this channel him coming out of the 7th precinct today in Suffolk County. And I can tell you, based on the look that I've saw, this is a massive man. This guy is a big guy. He's a big guy. So we're waiting for the press conference to come on. Be patient. Just talking about this case firsthand. But there's some interesting things that I saw. And according to a document, they're trying to say on March 14th, 2022, at approximately 2 months into the renewed joint investigation, comprehensive review led to the discovery of a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche that was registered to defendant Rex A. Heuermann at the time of the MURDERS. And it says, as described below, this was significant because a witness to the disappearance of Amber Costello identified a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche as the vehicle to be driven by the KILLER. So there's a witness out there. There's a witness that saw this Chevrolet Avalanche. It looks like Rex does not have that anymore because, you know, as we know, that these crimes occurred way back in 2010. Unclear when he got rid of the vehicle. Maybe he even got rid of the vehicle right afterward. We don't know that at this time. But it's wild. So they do have a witness with a vehicle. And then they were also talking about Rex's wife's DNA, who was out of state at the time, was found on the victims, which is very, very strange to me when I saw that. Now, I have to look more into that and find out more details about that, but that's something that has been spread across over the internet. If that's the case, is that similar to a touch DNA type thing going on? We've heard the touch DNA terminology before. But you know, these murders happened. It looks like the murders happened according to what I'm watching here on the map here, you know, December 13th, and December 11th. So December 11th to December 13th, 2010. And there's others, but he's not charged with the others at this time. I think what I'm going to do later on this channel is read the indictment after this press conference. After this press conference is going down, I plan on putting that information out there and dissecting it. I'm going to follow this case because it's just fascinating. But the question I have, and if some of you guys can enlighten me on this, is why did it take so long? Like, how did if they were so-called tracking his phone, if they were tracking his phone way back then, Why did it take so long to find him? Why did it take so long to finally make an arrest? Better late than never, which, we know. It kind of reminds me a little bit, this situation too kind of reminds me a little bit about Richard Allen in Delphi, Indiana. You have, an unsolved case there that went unsolved for 5 years, and the person responsible was living right there. This guy here was living literally near the scene of where all this happened. This was his backyard, more or less, across a bay onto the beach. But that is like a wild scenario that they didn't arrest this guy 13 years, 12 years, going on to 13 years. Today he was taken out in cuffs. Obviously, he's not going to get bail. Don't know what his family's like. He got arrested at his jobs, allegedly. The job that he works as an architect person in Manhattan. He works with his daughter. His daughter works for him. His daughter's name is Victoria. I believe that reporters were trying to reach out to her. I don't think she would have a comment. I would think probably most likely the family of hers is probably just in shock, right? It's always the shock with the family members. But sometimes, makes me wonder if the family really had clues and signs, based off their behaviors. Why would this guy do this? Why would this guy do this? How far is the home from the marsh? I'll tell you right now. How far his home. Let me just give me a second to look. I'm kind of looking on my map at the same time. It's not far. I mean, it's I don't know if it's in walking distance. Obviously, he was seen in a car. It is, according to the map that I got, 15 miles away. Now, 15 miles away via vehicle. Now, it's way closer if he would have took a direct cross over into, it looks like South Oyster Bay, but you can't obviously drive across the bay. So he has to take this road here. It looks like Route 107 to get there. It looks like the main road that goes onto the island. Goose Creek Bridge, if you guys haven't seen that area. I'm unfamiliar with this. Again, I kind of heard about this case. But, sometimes in true crime, what happens is once a case goes unsolved once the case kind of gets a cold on cases, it kind of hits the back burner and you kind of forget. I've heard about this over the years kind of, but I didn't really pay attention. But then for me, it's like forgotten because it's, 2010 is a long, long time. And suddenly this hit me and I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? I saw it across the wires today. Like, wow. I'm sure we'll hear more about the victim, from the victims' families that will probably speak out on this. Who knows what they're going through? Matter of fact, I think one of the victims' families tweeted out earlier that, it's a good day or something in that sense. It's a good day. One of the victims' family members was on Twitter putting out, hey, it was a good day. Yeah, it's probably a good day. But also another report was saying that the family was the victim's lawyer has the lawyers representing two of the families. The lawyer knew this was coming, knew allegedly, that's what the report was saying, that an arrest was coming, within the next week. But then I'm hearing that yesterday they find skeletal remains nearby too. Does anyone know what that's about? The skeletal remains. It is unclear if police believe the cooler is tied to the Gilgo 4 killings because they took a cooler out of his house. They took a cooler out of his house today. They went to this house. It looks like they were at his house. Well, they arrested him at his job. And then they swarmed at his home, the First Avenue and Massapequa Park. Says he's a married dad of two. An architect who runs RH Architects in New York City. He went to court shortly before 9:30 a.m. After the initial early morning arrest. At least 8 investigators in forensic gear were still milling around the home near the quiet suburban intersection. So they were there, and we were playing that earlier. They looked like, I thought they were in hazmat suits. I was wondering, why would you go in hazmat suits? But I guess you could just don't trust the situation, and it's better to be safe than sorry. Heuermann, he was been on the special Gilgo Beach homicide investigation task force radar for at least a year. And he was finally arrested after being linked to so-called Gilgo through DNA, like DNA. What kind of DNA? What type of DNA? Somebody said a pizza crust, I believe. I believe somebody said maybe a pizza crust or something. Is that true? Is that true? I don't know if it's true or not. But we're just waiting for the press conference, so bear with us. And then we're going to watch this press conference together and try to get some insight on what authorities said, what led them up. But apparently there's different reports, like he has just recently resurfaced or just recently became under their radar within the last year. When I say recent, it's not necessarily recent, but, considering the case 2010, you build a case, they probably had some suspects. They started analyzing, and they were like, it's this guy. And, you need proof. You need proof before you make an arrest, right? His arrest marks the first major break in the case, which first made headlines when the bodies of 4 young women were discovered wrapped in burlap along a strip of Ocean Parkway in late 2010. He's not believed to be connected to the additional 6 bodies that were eventually discovered nearby. Now, that's kind of strange. If he's not connected to the other 6 bodies, who did them? Who did them? Like, is it just coincidental that, hey, we find he's linked to 3 bodies or 4 bodies, 3, he's charged with 3. They say 4 that he's involved with, but yeah, there's other bodies nearby, but yeah, no, that's not him. Unless that's just that island is just a dumping ground. And I don't mean to be graphic or offensive when I say that. Now, there's also some reports. I got a tweet. Somebody tweeted me and said that there's others involved. Did anyone ever hear about anything else about others possibly involved with this? Because I also heard that too. Like, others are involved. So, I mean, are others involved? Is this like somebody else involved? Let me go to my notifications because someone said to me, and I'm waiting for this press conference, said that there could be others involved. Mr. Gray, victim's attorneys, or Mr. Gay, Gay. So the victim's attorney's name is Mr. Gay. Mr. Gay, victim's attorney, just went live stressing there are multiple suspects, murderers still at large in this case. Stressed law enforcement must re-engage and go after the others. Is this some sort of ring? If that's the case, if that's true, are we dealing with some sort of, a lot of people at the time were speculating whether Richard Allen, acted alone. And I'm just using the Delphi murder case. Reason being because, we'll even talk about other cases. Brian Kohlberger asked, is there anyone else that's arrested and stuff like that? Is there other people on the loose that are involved with this? Is there other people on the loose? It's a wild situation, but I'm just waiting to see if when this press conference comes up, I don't see it shown anywhere. It's scheduled to start now. Scheduled to start right now. And so far, okay, so we might have something going on. Okay, it's about to begin right now. I see it on the News Nation Twitter feed on News Nation. Let me get it in here and be able to share it with you. Here, I'll put it right here. I'll send it to this thing. It's on the News Nation Twitter feed, so I'll get it onto here. Here we go. Here we go. So, interesting.
He's been arrested by the Suffolk County Police Department's homicide detectives, and he's been indicted in a grand jury presentation by the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office for the murders of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. The investigation of Maureen Brainerd Barnes is ongoing. These young women went missing between July of 2007 and September of 2010. They were found in December of 2010 by the Suffolk County Police Department, and then there was nothing, absolutely nothing. For the next 13 years, their cases went unsolved until today. When I took office in January of 2022, I made Gilgo a priority. I made Gilgo a priority before I took office. I met with the victims' families, some of whom I'm proud to have standing with us today. And I told them that we were going to handle this case differently. We were going to do it differently. And that when I showed up, you weren't going to see me calling the media and being on Gilgo Beach with a giant magnifying lens looking for clues 12 years after the case. What I was going to do was I was going to work with my task force. We were going to form a task force. We were going to work with the Suffolk County Police Department. We were going to work with the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office. We were going to work with the new. We knew that when we were investigating this case and when we dealt with the media or whatever it was we were doing, we were playing before a party of one. Because we knew the person responsible for these murders would be looking at us. So we were very careful how we handled the investigation. We maintained the integrity of the investigation. Most importantly of all, we maintained the secrecy of that investigation. And I think that's paid dividends as we've seen today. Now, I think that when we had the task force, the first thing we did, got together with Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison. We formed the task force. Our first meeting was February 1st of 2022. And what we did, all of the agencies here, we made the commitment. We were going to take our most talented investigators. So in the district attorney's office, we took ADAs, myself included. We took analysts, we took detective investigators, and they worked on a daily basis with other talented investigators from all of the agencies here. We started that in February 1st, 2022. 6 weeks later, on March 14th, 2022, the name Rex Heuermann was first mentioned as a suspect in the Gilgo case. A New York State investigator was able to identify him in a database, and from that point on, we used the power of the grand jury, over 300 subpoenas and search warrants, looking into this individual's background to bring us to this day. So I'm proud. I know that this case is over, but I'm proud of what we've accomplished up to this point. I know we have more to accomplish, but I'm also thankful for the partnership of the task force, because certainly without the participation of the task force, we wouldn't be standing here. Before I thank some folks and turn it over to our partners, I just want to talk a little bit about the evidence in the case. I know a lot of people know about the case. As I indicated, the victims went missing between July of 2010 and July of 2007 and September of 2010. And in December of 2010, they were of the task force. We wouldn't be standing here. Before I thank some folks and turn it over to our partners, I just want to talk a little bit about the evidence in the case. I know a lot of people know about the case. As I indicated, the victims went missing between July of 2010 and July of 2007 and September of 2010. And in December of 2010, they were their bodies were recovered. They were buried in a similar fashion, at a similar location, in a similar way. All the women were petite. They were they all did the same thing for a living. They all advertised the same way, and there were immediately there were similarities with regard to the crime scenes. All the women were bound at the head, at the midsection, or at the chest, and later at the legs. The other thing I think was that's been talked about in the media was that we were bound by burlap. That has taken a life of its own in the media, and the burlap has been described or thought to be the burlap that's used at a nursery. Or that's not the burlap that was used in this case. The burlap was camouflage burlap used for duck blinds of hunting. Obviously, it was used to purposely hide the bodies. One thing that became immediately apparent was at the time of each of the murders, the murderer, the defendant Heuermann, he got a cell phone and a burner phone, which is prepaid and anonymous. And for each of the murders, he got an individual burner phone, and he used that to communicate with the victims. Then shortly after the death of the victims, he then would get rid of the burner phone. And right away in December of 2012, FBI CAST analysts, special agents with the CAST unit of the FBI, they immediately began looking at that cell site data. They compared the victims' phones with the burner phones, and they immediately honed in on some similarities, specifically in the Massapequa Park area. And they looked at an area of a confluence of 4 cell towers. And they realized that this had significance because the perpetrator of these crimes was probably located within this area at or around the times of the murderer. And that was mapped out. That was called the box, and it was an area in Massapequa Park. The FBI also managed to do that for an area in Midtown Manhattan. And so that was an investigative lead. The other investigative lead at the time was, even though there was a significant amount of time that elapsed with regard to before the victims were recovered, there was some significant evidence recovered. Specifically, there was a hair recovered from Maureen Brainerd Barnes from a belt buckle that was around her legs. With regard to Megan Waterman, there were 3 hairs recovered from her, one from around her head area, one from around her leg area in the burlap, and then there was one caught in between the tape. And that was recovered. Amber Costello also had a significant hair that was recovered during the time of the recovery. But again, the crime scene, because it was out there for so long and because it was exposed to the elements, those hairs were degraded, so you couldn't use traditional DNA analysis on it. You would have to wait and use mitochondrial DNA. And back in 2010, the technology wasn't there for mitochondrial DNA. So the investigation proceeded, but also technology proceeded as well. And then in January and February of 2022, we formed the task force. We began working collectively. And then a mere 6 weeks later, on March 14th, 2022, Rex Heuermann was identified for the first time. And the manner in which that was done was the New York State investigator looked at a database. Amber Costello, the day before her disappearance on September 1st, 2010, she met with an individual for the purposes of having him pay her money for her services. But she involved herself in a ruse where once the individual gave her money, and other individuals came into the house, pretended to be significant others, confronted the individual with the purpose of making that individual uncomfortable, having him leave without retrieving his money, and that's exactly what happened. So that individual was identified as a person who was between 6'4" and 6'6", a large man, thickly built, not necessarily overly muscular, but just a naturally big person with glasses, white, and dark hair. Also of significance was that the fact that he was driving a dark-colored or black first generation Chevrolet Avalanche with a very unique feature that was between it's a pickup truck, so it was between the cab and the bed, and that was identified. Again, that was back in 2010. But it wasn't until March of 2022 that database was searched by the task force, and this individual was identified. That individual was Rex Heuermann, the defendant. And right away, there were some commonalities that came right to the fore. Rex Heuermann, 6'4", largely a large person, not necessarily muscular, but a very physically large person. He has glasses. He has the dark hair, and also a particular note. He owned at the time that first generation Chevy Avalanche, but there was more. He lived at 105 First Avenue, which was located within that box area that the FBI first discovered in 2012. But there was more. Also, he worked at the time at an architect and he owned his own architectural firm at an address at 19 West 36th Street in Midtown Manhattan, and that was also the area of interest that was identified by the FBI in 2012. Again, that was March 14th, 2022. And from that point on, our partners and my office, we used the grand jury to continue to investigate, and we executed over 300 subpoenas, search warrants pertaining to this individual to find out more information. One of the things that we did is we followed him because we wanted to get an abandonment sample of his DNA, which we were able to do. We also got DNA samples, abandonment samples from his family. And then we went back and we got mitochondrial DNA testing. And there's an aspect of New York State law that doesn't allow me to talk about DNA testing, specific press conferences. It's so I can't do that. However, at the arraignment, and also when we filed our bail letter, we talked about the significance of that evidence. So if anyone needs to see that, but suffice to say, that evidence was significant, especially with regard to the other evidence that we had developed. But there was another interesting aspect. We looked at the Heuermann family travel records, and we learned that during the murders of the last three women, Bartholomew, Waterman, and Costello, that during the commission of those murders, the defendant's wife and children were out of New York State, and he was alone in the tri-state area. We also went back and looked at his cell site records, and we compared his personal cell site records with that of the four target phones, and we saw that there was areas of commonality. In other words, that whenever the target phones would bounce off a cell tower, if the Heuermann personal phone bounced off a tower, it was always consistent and in close proximity with the target phones. And at no time was there ever an instant where those target phones were, for instance, in New Jersey while the defendant was on Long Island. So that was completely consistent. The other thing that we looked at was we looked at his use of burner phones. And we followed, using the grand jury, using the great investigative help from our partners, we followed his use of burner phones. We were able to identify 7 separate burner phones that he used. We were able to use fictitious or fraudulent email addresses and get Google warrants. And from there, we got his searches. And we learned what the defendant was searching. In a 14-month period, he had over 200 searches pertaining to the Gilgo investigation. Not only was he looking at investigative insight, he was trying to figure out how is the task force using cell phones to try to figure out what's happening. What are the developments with regard to the task force? And this really supported our decision to keep our investigative focus secret, because we knew that this one person would be watching, and we didn't want to give him any insight into what we were doing. And we also didn't want to those Gilgo searches. He was compulsively searching pictures of the victims, but not only pictures of the victims, pictures of their relatives, their sisters, their children, and he was trying to locate those individuals. In addition to that, there was a lot of torture, porn, and what you would consider depictions of women being abused, being raped, and being killed. In addition to all of that, we continue to look, and we were able to determine that Chevy Avalanche that was used during the commission of the Amber Costello crime, that Chevy Avalanche was in South Carolina. And again, with the help of our partners, we were able to seize that Chevy Avalanche pursuant to a search warrant, and we're certainly going to analyze that. In addition to that, pursuant to the arrest of the defendant last night by the Suffolk County Police Department, we obtained one of his burner phones, his last burner phones. As I said, this case is not over, it's only beginning. We're continuing to execute search warrants, and we anticipate getting more evidence. Before I go over to my partners, I want to thank a lot of people in the room. First and foremost, I want to thank the victims in this case. You know, it's always inspiring as a prosecutor when you get to meet the victims. And while sometimes our defendants could embody the very worst of humanity, it seems that invariably our victims embody the very best of what it means to be human. And in this case, it was no different. I've gotten to know the families, and I'm inspired by them, and I'm impressed by their patience and by their dogged persistence in not only supporting their lost sisters or mother or daughter, but also really really standing for victims everywhere. So I want to thank them all so much. And I want to let them know that we're going to continue to work this case. The next thing I want to do, I want to thank our partners. I want to thank Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison. We said it was a change, and when we talked about not going before the media, if you see, Rodney did go before the media, but it was always in a very controlled manner, and it was always with a controlled purpose. Again, we did that because we knew we were playing before an audience of one person. And so I want to thank Rodney for his partnership. Most importantly, I want to thank Rodney for his integrity. I think in the past, the reason why these various investigations fell short was because there was a lot of outside influence, a lot of people who had nothing to do with the investigation, nothing to do with the investigation or any of the agencies that were actually handling the investigation. They still asserted pressure on those investigations. That did not happen with our task force. Our task force was run by our members, and we did what we thought was in the best investigative steps of the investigation. So I want to thank Rodney for that, and his whole team. I know that we have Suffolk County Homicide here, Kevin Byer. We've got Inspector Rowan. And I know that they've been around, and I know that they're here, and I know that they stand with past investigators, and I want to congratulate them, and I want to thank them for their partnership. I also want to thank Sheriff Errol Toulon. Everything I said about Rodney, I could say about Errol. Errol is an unbelievable partner. He was an unbelievable partner in this case. During the pendency of this case, and one of the reasons why we had to take this case down was we learned that the defendant was using these alternate to continue to patronize sex workers, which of course made us very nervous. But with the help of the sheriff and his database and his analysts, we were able to continually stay one step ahead of the defendant. So thank you, Sheriff Toulon. I want to thank the FBI. I know Assistant Director in Charge Michael Brodak is here. I want to thank his entire team. You know, when you have the FBI, not only do you have tremendous resources and insight, whether it's the Behavioral Sciences Unit, whether it's CAST, whether it's CART, which is their computer unit, but you also have the ability to seize a car in South Carolina. I can't seize a car in South Carolina without the FBI. So thank you for that. And thank you for your partnership, and thank you for your willingness to work with us. I want to thank the New York State Troopers. I know Major Deese is here and his team. This case is emblematic of great cooperation, but we always get that same level of cooperation from the state police, no matter what case we're working. So I want to thank them. Their investigators did great work on this job and in this case, and we couldn't have done it without them. Lastly, I want to thank Nassau County Police Commissioner Pat Ryder. I don't know if he's here. Did he make it? This case, as I said, spans 13 years, and during that time, Pat Ryder has been our neighbor to the west. When he started, I think he was a sergeant, detective sergeant, maybe uniform sergeant, but whatever. Whenever we needed something to be done, or whenever the task force needed something to be done, Pat Ryder would do it, and he would do it quietly, without much fanfare, and we know he would keep the confidentiality of our grand jury and our investigation. So I want to thank him for that. And with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Rodney Harrison.
Good afternoon. Today is a good day. And before I acknowledge the individuals that had a role in getting to this place, I would first and foremost like to offer my deepest condolences to the family members. To the family members of Amber Costello, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman.
Three.
I can only imagine what you had to endure over the last decade regarding knowing that your killer was still loose. God bless you. So I've had the privilege of being the police commissioner nearly about 2 years now, and I have had that investigative experience in the NYPD as a detective, as the chief of detectives, And when I was going through the process of being the police commissioner, my engagement with the county executive was I was very familiar with this unfortunate homicide. And I wanted to let it be known this was going to be our number one priority. But I also want to make this very clear that this arrest was made by the investigators assigned to the task force. I announced during a press conference 18 months ago about a new team effort that was going to investigate the homicide, and that was going to consist of people from Ray Tierney's office, from Mike Broddock, FBI. Mike, thank you so much. State Police, Steve, appreciate your support. Dr. Earl Talon, Jr., thank you, sir. As well as the investigator from the homicide. Kevin, he broke the whole case down and where we stood. He knew the case like the back of his hand. He worked tirelessly in this case. Kev was in charge of overseeing the task force since its creation, and you did a phenomenal job, Kev. Thank you. So there's something that I learned from a former NYPD police commissioner, James O'Neill, which is in order to fight crime or to solve investigations, you have to make sure you're working with your law enforcement partners. The blueprint in making this arrest was a whole team effort. Everybody left their egos at the door and made sure that they brought the knowledge and the resources to this investigation. Fresh eyes on this case and the resiliency of our investigators allowed us to identify Rex Heuermann. Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us, a predator that ruined families. If not for the members of this task force, he would still be out in the streets today. However, even with this arrest, we're not done. There's more work to do in this investigation regarding the other victims of the Gilgo Beach bodies that were discovered. I'm going to encourage anybody that still has information, call our Crime Stoppers hotline, 1-800-220-TIPS. I want to recognize and thank my Chief of Detectives, John. Thank you for your great work. Deputy Police Commissioner Anthony Carter, both of you who provided update information regarding the case and let it be known if there was any resources that they needed that you brought it to my attention. Since the discovery of the first victim, there's been a lot of scrutiny and criticism regarding how this investigation was handled. I will tell you this, the investigators were never discouraged. They continued and uncovered evidence and followed leads. They never stopped working and will continue to work tirelessly until we bring justice to all the families involved. Last but not least, I want to thank my predecessors that came before me, the work that they did. I want to thank them for really laying the foundation that helped us get to here today. Thanks, Ray.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Brodak. I'm the FBI Special Agent in charge of the New York office's Criminal Division. The FBI expended its full set of resources in support of our local and state partners to advance this investigation. The charges show that we can overcome the most difficult challenges when federal, state, and local law enforcement work together under one task force. While nothing can fill the void caused by the loss of a loved one, through today's announcement, we are hopeful that the families of the victims begin to experience a sense of peace, closure, and justice, and that the general public feels safer knowing that an alleged killer is no longer roaming free. The actions taken today should serve as a reminder that the FBI, along with our law enforcement partners, will continue to be resolute in our determination to bring all offenders to justice, no matter how many years has passed. I would like to thank Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney and his prosecution team, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison and the Suffolk County Police Department, New York State Police, and the investigators and staff of the FBI New York Field Office, including the Long Island Violent Crime Task Force. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Errol D. Toulon Jr., and I'm the Sheriff of Suffolk County. I would profoundly like to thank the District Attorney and the Police Commissioner for including me not only here today, but for including the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office and recognizing the importance of jail intelligence. It is extremely important when you realize that we created our human trafficking unit in 2018, that there are victims in our community, and that intelligence is being shared by many of the men and women who are incarcerated today. And we have seen many disjointed investigations occur, and leading up to the leadership of these two men have really brought everything together. I am proud that today we stand here a little bit closer to bringing closure to the families and extend my deepest condolences to all of you. Because of the nature of this case, and recognizing that human trafficking and corrections intelligence is so important, we realize that there are many other cases that are going on that we will help to solve going forward. So I thank my intelligence staff and team that are here today for their diligence and their work. While we did our part in this investigation, we continue because we have to house this individual. We have already designated or talked about certain locations where we will house him. And in addition, the security measures we will implement in our facility to make sure that this individual is brought to justice the way he should be. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Good afternoon. I'm Colonel Richard Allen, the field commander with the state police. And I want to start by expressing my sincere condolences to the family members that are here today. Although losing a loved one, will never completely get rid of that pain, but hopefully these steps that are taken here today are a step in the right direction for you to start in the healing process or work through the healing process. I want to thank the members of the task force, all the agencies you see behind me. When we were approached in 2022 to be part of this task force, we were fully engaged. Glad to be part of this. We assigned investigators on a full-time basis. You know, what you see being done here today is the end game of agencies working together, as was said before, with no egos, all egos put aside, with the sole to find justice for these victims. You know, here in Troop L, Major Stephen Udis oversees the operations down here. He has been intricately involved in this task force since we became partners with it. And I'm going to ask him to come up and say a few words or expand upon this a little bit of our role in the task force.
Thank you, Colonel. Good afternoon. I'm Major Steve Udis, New York State Police, Troop L, Long Island Troop Commander. I'd like to take this opportunity to start off by acknowledging the DA, Ray Tierney, and Commissioner Rodney Harrison for having the vision to see that forming a task force might breathe new light into this investigation. The state police were asked in early 2022 to join this task force, and once requested, we were more than willing to do so. We were also very pleased that we were able to make some very meaningful contributions in this case to help propel it forward. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the task force members from the different agencies and congratulate them on a job well done. I think this case represents an example of what we as law enforcement can do when we pool our resources together and we work together. I would also like to mention the state police member assigned to this task force. You were provided with a mission, and that mission was to participate in this task force, put everything else that you were doing aside, place 100% of your attention on this case, and help push this case forward. You more than accomplished that mission. I congratulate you on a job well done, and I commend you for your outstanding work. To the families, I'd like to say that on behalf of myself and the New York State Police, we offer you our deepest condolences. We recognize that these crimes may have happened years ago, but that pain continues. Our hope is that this development today provides you with some relief and some comfort, knowing that the person responsible for your loved one's death is now being held accountable, and he's no longer a threat to anyone else in society. I want you to know, additionally, that the state police is not done here. We are remaining committed and will continue to support the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, the Suffolk County Police Department, and this task force as we move into the next phase of this process. That's the prosecution. I would also like to say something to everyone watching this with us today. There's been a lot of discussion here today about charges, about the suspect, about what happened, but I would also like everybody to take the time to join with me and keep the families of the victims and the victims themselves in your thoughts and in your prayers. Each one of these victims was a family member and a loved one, and their void and their loss caused great pain, and they did not deserve this. Nobody is deserving of this. We hope this development today will bring some comfort to them as they move forward. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
DA, in court you said that the investigation had to be cut short at one point because of, I think you were hearing this.
Questions are kind of hard.
The safety of people in the community. Can you just explain that more here?
Sure. Before I do that, I'm standing back there. I realized I didn't thank my own team. So I want to thank my chief investigator, Rick Zacharis, who is I'm so lucky to have. I want to thank Nick Santamartino, ADA Nick Santamartino, ADA Michelle Haddad, ADA Andrew Lee. I also want to thank my chief assistant, Alan Bodie, and I want to thank all of the incredible analysts that we have working for us at the Suffolk County DA's office. So, having said that, I'll now answer your question. I think that there was a tension in the task force, and it was a good tension because there's a tension between getting the evidence necessary to charge somebody, but also keeping the public safe, and that's the tension that we always deal with. So as we were working forward, we had Suffolk County PD, we had the FBI surveilling the defendant. Obviously, that can't be all the time, but we were reasonably assured with that. But this individual was a person that continued to patronize sex workers at all hours of the night. He continued to use fictitious email addresses, fictitious identities, burner phones. And so as we worked through the case and we got closer and closer, all of a sudden, and we built the evidence, suddenly the balance tips in favor of public safety. So, I think we all wanted as a task force to continue it, but I think collectively we felt that it was time to strike that balance and to take him off the street. So that's what we did.
Yeah, I see that you have some of the family members gathered here today. Could you introduce some of them, and if they wanted to say anything about the news?
I don't believe they. Does anybody want to say? No, they're here. They're. I can tell you they're the Waterman, Bartholomew, and Brainerd Barnes family members, but they're here. They're here first and foremost to support their loved ones, and we're happy and grateful to have them here.
Are you looking at any other people? Do you believe that there are multiple people responsible for
the remains for the murders?
The,
Have you-
this portion had to deal with the deaths of these 4 young women. And that's what we focused on. That was what the grand jury investigation was focused on. I talked about the commonalities, and the commonalities, all those commonalities that we talked to were unique to these 4 separate cases. So that's what we're working on. I think the other members of the task force said, you know, we're going to continue, you know, and continue to work and investigate and try to get a small measure of closure for all the victims' families. But for right now, this defendant, it's this defendant with these 4 victims.
So the other remains, is there any relationship between the Heuermann and the other remains, other than the 4?
I'm here to talk about what we did with regard to these 4 victims, and as I opened my address by talking about the need to maintain investigative secrecy. So we are going to maintain that investigative secrecy, and when I talk about other individuals and other cases, it will be after they have handcuffs on.
You mentioned that there was a New York State officer made the link with Heuermann. He looked at data, and that's when Heuermann came up shortly after the task force. Can you explain that? Can you talk a little more about that?
So, I mean, you know, we talked about, you know, some of the evidence that was there. You know, obviously the cast, that phone evidence was great evidence. And then there were other commonalities, there were other investigations. But I think one of the good things about having a task force is basically you strip it all down. And you start from scratch, and then you use the DA's office, because the DA's office has to get you the lifeblood of an investigation is information. And the way you get information on a cold case is the district attorney's office issues subpoenas in conjunction with the investigators and execute search warrants, again in conjunction with the investigators, and then you mine all that data, and then you let that data take you where you need to go. So that's what we did in this case. And 6 weeks in, the break in the case, a significant break in the case, was the avalanche, and the fact that this guy, you know, he was described by witnesses as an ogre. He matched the description of the ogre and where he lived.
Was the avalanche the link there? Was that what jumped out?
Well, I mean, it was a lot of things, right? It was his physical size. It was his where he lived, where he worked, the fact that his family members were out of the country at the time of the commission of the 3 murders, the fact that he now then you start looking into him, and then you start getting burner phones. Well, we had up to 7 burner phones. He's using these fictitious email addresses. So then you follow him and you get an abandonment sample. Then you go back to some of the old evidence. So it's, you know, there are, I mean, March 14th, 2022 was a huge day for the task force, but you know, it's never one piece of evidence. Well, there's like what they'll call lawman searches. And basically what it is you run a certain make and model of a car and certain other, you know, where you live or what you do for a living, and then you get data, and then you mine that data for something that would match with your case. And you do that just, you know, you do that 100 times, you know, until it hits, until you get the right data points.
Did the suspect say anything when he was arrested? Was he surprised? Did he admit to the murders?
So we can't talk about ethically in New York. We can't talk about any statements the defendant made, but he made. We're not turning over any statements.
Was he surprised?
I would say he was. Yeah. So in between the bed and the cab, there's like a little triangular ornament almost, and it's unique in the way it's configured. It's unique to the avalanche. It was unique to the avalanche at that time, and that was something that was pointed out by witnesses. What? Well, you know, the investigation is continuing, and I would never say never. And we're going to continue to look at, again, now this is a watershed event in this case. And so we've now are going out and we're executing more search warrants. we'll get more information, more data, and together we'll look at that and see where it leads.
Can you share how the other victims' families are feeling today?
I'm sorry.
Did you speak to the other victims' families? Did they tell you how they're feeling today?
Which so this investigation had to do with these four victims. So we've been in touch with the four victims through the grand jury process. With regard to victims in general and other victims, who lost people in the vicinity of that area, we speak to our victims all the time. But those are conversations that we keep between ourselves.
The grand jury
Why
was
is
a panel.
one victim that has not been linked to the charges to the suspect at this point?
So so first off, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, the other three, one went missing in 2009. I believe the others in 2010. She was in 2007, so it was a little bit more remote in time. We are working through evidence. A lot of that evidence has to do with forensic evidence and analyses that are not completed. But once those analyses are completed, we feel good about the case, and we're going to just continue to let that process go. And again, I think the initial plan was to allow the grand jury investigation to go a little further, but at a certain time, again, the task force felt, we need to for reasons having nothing to do with the evidence in the case, we need to take it down.
And Jay, can you just sum up this defendant? You've seen a lot. Can you just sum up this defendant and what he is?
He's it's as a prosecutor and as investigators, he is charged with a crime. There are certain elements in which we need to prove that crime. We are going to prove those elements. We're going to work hard. We're going to convict him, and we're going to hold him responsible for what he did. And whether, what I think of him personally, whether I like him, whether I don't like him, whether I doesn't matter, we're going to hold him responsible for what he did in this case.
When is the grand jury and panel, and is it concluded?
The grand jury is it's secret, and we're going to keep it secret. But we have an investigation, and it is continuing.
There was a belt that was presented publicly by the Suffolk County Police Department a few years ago with initials on it. I think one of the initials appeared to be MW, MH, or WH, or something along those lines. Obviously, this guy's got an H in his name.
Sure does.
Talk about that?
I mean, he has an H in his name. He is so it's what was it, HM or WH? Yeah, so he's got an H in his name, and other relatives in his family have a W in their name. What that means, I don't know.
Can you talk about alleged why? Motive? Why?
I think that when you look at his internet searches, I think that provides a little insight into his state of mind. And again, we don't have to prove motive. We have to prove the elements, and that's what we're going to do.
Don't have to prove motive, prove the elements.
Well, you said women. With regard to the sex workers, what we did was we had him under surveillance. We had other means of monitoring him, and again, it's a process, and that process is you have to balance the ability to find enough evidence to charge him and hold him responsible with the balance of keeping the public safe. And it's not easy. And we decided at a certain point in time that that we needed to take him down because we didn't feel comfortable with it. So that's what we did.
Did the frequency of his searches or the type of his searches increase to cause you alarm?
I don't think it was so much. I don't think it was so much the searches. I think that the conduct of the defendant was very consistent. I think, but the quality of our evidence was increasing by the day, by the moment, due to the great work of our task force partners. So at a certain point in time, we're like, okay, we can do this.
Was there a murder weapon, or was this all by physical force?
I believe the cause of death is homicidal violence. Obviously, given the length of time and the exposure to a very harsh environment, forensically, there was not, not a lot that could be done with the remains, other than come to that conclusion.
He owned 92 guns. It was said at the arraignment that he had a
He
license.
has permits for 92 guns. He has a very large safe in which guns are kept. We are continuing to execute search warrants, so I'm sure we'll have that answer shortly.
There's quite a large gap between when he last turned down his arrest. Is there any concern that he committed any other crimes in that time period before the task force was set up?
I'm sorry?
Is there any concern that obviously he last was known to commit a crime in 2010 and it's now 2013? The task force was set up in 2022. That's quite a large gap. Is there any concern?
I think there's always concerns. I think, I got into office in January 22. We worked with our partners. We had our first meeting February 1st, and we worked, and March 14th was really that watershed day. And when I tell you, I'd like to brag and say that my office was really working hard, which we were, but no other agency was working any less hard than we were. Once we realized what we had and we realized the stakes, all of our partners really worked. I think if you look at the folks standing here, I don't think that, in the last 48 hours, any of us have gotten more than 3 hours sleep.
Regarding Maureen Bernard-Barnes, how much more do you need to actually tie into that?
We are going to continue our investigation, and when we are prepared, when we have concluded that investigation, we will bring that to a conclusion, but we will not do it before.
All right, thank you. You have one more?
Yeah, between all the search warrants and the subpoenas, will you ever, do you ever think that you're gonna lose them? In between all the searching around and stuff?
I don't want to tell you, exact investigative techniques, because they're, again, part of the reasons why they're effective is because people don't necessarily know what it is exactly we do. But always a concern, but given the professionalism of our partners, their diligence and their commitment, we felt good about the case, or keeping the case going until we didn't, and then we took it down. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Very, 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 very interesting. Very interesting. So I had to switch different feeds on, trying to get you the best available feed. But what do you think? Wow. The way it sounds like is that they had a task force that they got together when this DA got into office and partnered with multiple law enforcement agencies there in different branches of agencies. And they went in it, and they said that March of last year, that's when they really got focused on this guy. They've mentioned stuff like, his behavior, his work, his proximity, burner phones, FBI cast, DNA, his avalanche, his car, his family out of town at the time. He just named a lot of factors that got this, but it's just unbelievable about a guy that just, again, one of the reporters asked, well, first off, he also said that in New York State, they don't have to prove motive. They have to prove elements, which means they don't necessarily have to prove to a court or a jury the motive in this case, just the elements and the facts, because they were asking, what was this guy's motive? And, he was implying that the district attorney was implying that, his searches, his online searches too, came into play. But a reporter asked him also, was like, yo, you didn't, this came from 2010 all the way up to 2022. Is there, You know, that's a long gap. Did this guy commit any more crimes in between? And the DA there didn't really answer. So, and then also, like I said, like he said, there's four victims here, but he's only charged with 3 at this time, and something triggered them to something, and I don't know what it was. Maybe he got wind on, you know, he's being investigated or looked at. It's something triggered them to make in and scoop in with the rest without getting the conclusion on the other victim, Barnes. I guess her last name is Barnes, because there's really 4 victims. They're saying he's responsible for 4, but he's actually only charged with 3. But something got them to swoop in and get him now. They thought like this was the time to get him now. I could only imagine his face, you know, getting arrested. I don't know what he was probably in total shock and awe. And then, you know, they were talking about at the time when these crimes were committed, his own family was out of town. But I do think Cast was a big role. We talked about Cast. I am fascinated with Cast. He said at a press conference here, they're not obligated to talk to any and explain anything about this FBI Cast. This FBI Cast is amazing technology. It can pinpoint people to feet and locations. And I think the Cast probably was the hugest out of all this on a combination of other things. Guys off the streets. Also, you notice he called him an ogre, O-G-R-E. Remember he called him an ogre? I'm looking at your comments. You know, I have your comments on this screen here, onto the left or onto the right, which is my left, your right. But he called him an ogre, O-G-R-E. Ogre, an ogre. An ogre. He called him an ogre. Big guy. He is a big guy. I made a video earlier when he was coming out of the 7th precinct and he was walking out in cuffs. He was taller than and bigger than everybody. A big, big, big dude. Yeah, everyone's correcting me like a Shrek. Ogre. Ogre. Not making fun of him at all. That's not what it's about, but he just described his look, right? He described his look. What does CAST stand for? It's a Cellular Analysis Survey Team or something like that. Cellular Analysis Survey Team, CAST. I believe. I might be off a little bit, but it's in that sense. It's an FBI elite group of cell phone technology people that go deeper than the traditional triangulation. They can nail things within feet. They're working on the Brian Kohlberger case. You know, they've been instrumental in a lot of crimes in the last few years, a lot. And it looks like they've done it again. They've been around for a while, I believe. I might have said incorrectly that, you know, they've only been around a few years. That's as far as genetic genealogy, DNA. Yo, they also said they got DNA from his family members too. DNA from his family members. I heard him say that. So it's wow. It's just unbelievable. You got a guy off the street, but I'm fascinated with the investigative tactics. You know, in this press conference, a lot of them were patting each other on the back. It was a victory lap. They were giving each other shout outs and pats on the back and stuff like that. I don't have no problem with that. Do you guys have a problem with that? I mean, these guys worked hard. They said that one particular investigator worked nonstop around the clock himself and put everything to the side to work this. So, I mean, they're working around the clock, you know, and obviously the victim's family supported because two of the victims' families were standing there behind them. They didn't want to speak. I don't think they were there to speak. But it's you know, I'll keep tabs on this case. He's going to get. Now, where will he be housed, too? That's another situation. Will he be housed in the Suffolk County Jail, or will they do kind of like what they did with Richard Allen and start sending him in another location just for his... See, it's a pretty populated county over there, so I figure he'd probably be in there. Or what's that next county over there? Suffolk County, and there's 2 counties on that Long Island. Maybe they sent him to the other one. Possibly. But yeah, the guy just blended in. I made a video. I shot images of his home. So if you want to see some backstory to this guy in the last, you know, since this case happened, I posted a video. It showed where his house. He lives in this little brown rancher house surrounded by neighbors that have nice homes. Honestly, if you could say, you know, there's always one neighbor in your street that has the worst house, he's probably the one with the worst house in the neighborhood. Though his neighbors said he was very kind. A couple of his neighbors spoke out. I played their interviews. They were out in the street. It was just all out there. It was just a whole circus outside his block. Everybody's probably in shock. Didn't hear anything yet about him being a bad person. Haven't heard anyone yet come to the plate and say, hey, this dude is, has attitude problem or not. But I'm sure we'll get somebody that comes up and says instances they had. But the neighbor said he was normal. He was normal. Guy worked as an architect, tech guy, kind of just blended in. But that, they're the scariest. Those type of people are the scariest. The ones that, kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing, or, wolf in sheep's clothing, a chameleon. Something got to be in this guy. I mean, for him to just be able to do that and then just hide off. And no, he didn't repent and he didn't make changes in his life. This is unforgiving. It doesn't matter how long ago it was. Statute of limitations don't run out. He's going to be held accountable for what he did. But I'm going to be following this case. Maybe later on I'll come back on and read the indictment. I got the indictment, so I'll be following that. I'm covering this case. Somebody said 6'4", 300-pound giant did not just blend in. Interesting, right? Maybe it's not, some gentle giants, right? We've heard that term before, the gentle giant. So maybe he's the gentle giant in some people's eyes, like a nice guy. But yeah, it's a wild scene. It's a wild situation. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the broadcast. Sorry I had to switch a different feed. Some, volume was low, and I wanted to get that actual good feed and stuff like that. Sometimes it's readjusting in the fly. Thank you for being patient with me. I'll be reading your comments and everything like that, and we'll be following this case. Maybe some of the victims' families will speak out and share their thoughts. That will be interesting. I mean, this is a big case. This is a big case that's just, coming to light. And there could be more to this. There could be a lot more to this. It remains to be seen. But I'll be following it on this channel. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching JLR Investigates. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe, like, hit the notification button. You guys have a good weekend, man. It's Friday. Hopefully you guys, everyone do things productive, and be safe, everyone. Love your loved ones, man. It's a wild world. It's a great world. It's a beautiful world. Love this planet, but it's also had the bad, and we expose the bad, and we put the bad into, we shine the light on bad. And, hopefully we all are safe and secure. And you guys have a good day. God bless, everyone. Thanks for watching JLR Investigates.